when you and I were together, we talked about bright minds.
Right.
That if you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it if it's headed for trouble, we have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. But ultimately, I worked with BJ Fogg at Stanford for 6 months on creating tiny habits for brain health.
Okay.
And the mother habit, the most important habit, is this 3-second question. You just
Okay.
ask yourself, is this good for your brain or bad for it? And if you know the list, and quite frankly, most second graders know the list. I went to my daughter's second grade class and I wrote 20 things on the board and I'm
Yeah.
go separate them for me. Good for your brain or bad for your brain. And they got 19 out of 20 things right.
Okay,
The
so it's
only thing they
intuitive.
missed was orange juice, which is bad for your brain because it's too much sugar. But other than that, people sort of have a sense alcohol is really not great for your brain. Marijuana is not really great for your brain. Hitting soccer balls with your head's probably bad for your brain if you know your brain is soft and your skull is hard. Um, but bright minds, for me, it helps bring it home in a more scientific way. And so, for example, B is for blood flow. Low blood flow is the number one brain imaging predictor of Alzheimer's
Mm.
disease. And you had beautiful blood flow, which was a huge shock, uh, given
I
your
agree.
history, right?
I agree.
Uh,
Even yesterday, Mindy adjusted my neck and she's like, "Ooh, your atlas." And she like adjusted me. Even from that perspective, it seems like, that would pinch things off too.
what are the things that lower blood flow? Not exercising,
Right.
excessive caffeine, nicotine. Um, Erectile dysfunction. And I don't know if you know, but the statistics are scary
How
that
much of that
40%
exists?
of 40-year-olds have erectile dysfunction. 40% of 40-year-olds, 70% of 70-year-olds. And I'm like,
Interesting.
no, I'm not okay with this. But it comes from our poor diets, our lack of exercise, our incidence of diabetes.
Mm,
And if you want to increase blood flow, so each of these risk factors go, well, how do you prevent it?
right.
Exercise is probably the most important thing you can do.
Yeah.
Beets, cayenne pepper, the supplement ginkgo. Um, all of these things can increase blood flow. And so I want people to have blood flow envy because
Mm.
just so important. So whatever is good for your heart is good for your brain, and whatever's bad for your heart is bad for your brain. And
Mhm, mhm.
turns out sexual function.
I know it seems like a basic question, but what is the brain's function? And I'm asking that because, well, one, I'm just kind of curious what your answer is, but also there's just so much curiosity around like how the body works, what is our reality, consciousness, and how everything plays in. So, what do we know? Because there's a lot that we don't know about the brain. Is that accurate too?
People say that a lot, but there's a whole bunch we do know. And if you hurt certain parts of your brain, you tend to have certain problems. So if you hurt the front part of your brain, well, it's the executive part of the brain. It's involved in focus and forethought, judgment, impulse control, organization, planning, empathy, learning from the mistakes you make.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I like to teach people to do is how to have better frontal lobes.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, they have a better life because they know what they want and they see the future on how to get it. And then
Mm-hmm.
they act in ways that are consistent with their goals. So for
Mm-hmm.
all of my patients, I do an exercise I love called the one page miracle.
Oh.
On one piece of paper, write it down. What do you want? Relationships, work, money, physical, emotional, spiritual health. What do you want? And then
Mhm.
another tiny habit after you do that is before you go to do anything or say anything, you just go, well, does it fit? Does my behavior fit the goals I have for my life? And so many people have never, like, if you have a good business, you have a plan on
Mhm.
what are you going to do this quarter and this year and 3 to 5 years from now. Most of my patients I've seen over the years, they have no plan. And so they end up going from crisis to crisis. But that's what your frontal lobes do
Mhm.
is they plan, they organize, and they keep you on track. And when they're hurt from a head injury or heavy metal exposure or a near drowning episode,
Sure.
their level of impulsivity is high and they don't get their goals. So it's sort of like you driving without good brakes.
Mhm.
And so if you imagine yourself in a race car at the top of a mountain and you don't have good brakes, you're not getting to the bottom and you may die in the process.
Not in one piece.
That's that's what happens when people have low frontal lobe function. Now, if you have high frontal lobe function, it's like the brake's always on. So those are people who have OCD. So the purpose of the brain is to be aware and control your life. It's to think, it's to feel, it's to act, it's to interact. When it's not healthy, and I've seen a whole bunch of unhealthy brains, I have over 100 murderers that we've scanned. Their brains are not healthy.
Yeah, well, I was very curious about that. That was, definitely I wanted to get to that with this Dahmer documentary on Netflix being so popular. I think I even saw it said that it was one of the most popular on Netflix history. What is it that you've seen with, um, evil people, sociopaths, psychopaths, serial killers? I mean, I guess I can't say that I don't know if you've had serial killers in there before, but
It's not uncommon if you're in the clinic that somebody shows up in an orange jumpsuit and handcuffs and shackles. And I had one guy with a cobra tattoo on his skull. He was a pretty wicked. At least his behavior was wicked. And what I learned is that people that do bad things often, not always, but often have bad brains. And so I've testified in death penalty cases. And you might remember Kip Kinkle, who in 1998 murdered his mother and father. So he brought weapons to school. He got arrested. His mom and dad picked him up from jail at 6 o'clock at night. And sometime between 6 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock the next morning, he murdered his mom and dad. And then he went to his high school in Springfield, Oregon, and shot 25 people. Um, and based on my work, they scanned him at Oregon Health Sciences University, and they sent me the scans. 15 years old. He's got the most damaged 15-year-old brain I'd ever seen. And, he murdered his mother. So I don't exactly know why, but it could have been a lack of oxygen at birth. It could have been an infection. Um, it was something poisoning that poor boy's brain. Now, I always think of people in four big circles. We have a biology, so the physical functioning of our brain and body. We have a
Mhm.
psychology, which is how we think and
Mhm.
our development. We have a social circle,
Yeah.
what's going on in our life, right? How are we doing in school? What are our relationships like? Do we have money? And a spiritual circle, which is, so why the heck do you care? Why do you think you're on the planet? What is your deepest sense of meaning and purpose?
Yeah.
And I see you as a very purposeful person.
Mm.
When you think of serial killers, they have problems in all four of those circles
Mhm.
because, quite frankly, you can have a bad brain and never do anything bad. And so, Kip, what I got to know about him is there are trouble in all four of those circles. His purpose in life was to be a mass murderer. He had very bad thinking and was isolated and disconnected.
Hmm.
And yet, I scanned Byron Katie. She talked about it publicly. She's a spiritual teacher, and
Yep.
she had a terrible looking brain. And before she had her awakening, she woke up on the floor of a halfway house in 1986 and realized that when she believed her thoughts, she suffered. But when she didn't believe her thoughts, she didn't suffer. I mean, it's so cool, so powerful. She had a bad brain, but a wonderful spirit.